So it may seem like I'm walking right now. Looks can be deceiving, but in this particular case, they're not. I am walking. So I'm on a walking pad. I wish I could show you. My wife ordered a walking pad for her work, and I'm doing this to prove a point, to show you guys something. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about staying active and the active workday. I'm referencing workday, but we're not just talking about the active workday. We're talking about staying active throughout all aspects of your life, even during the times where it's relatively normal to be dormant or relatively normal to be sedentary. So I want to spend a little bit of time on that. So let's be honest, there's often times where we may not quite feel the motivation on a regular basis that we normally feel, right? And in a lot of cases, it has to do when we're doing dormant things. You know, you're at work or you're sitting in one spot, not moving, right? And not by choice, it's because you're busy doing whatever it takes for you to be sedentary in that particular spot. You know, for a lot of us, 8 hours a day, it's work. You know, a lot of us think, man, why do I feel this way today? You know, is it a motivation thing? Honestly, in my personal opinion, it's not a motivation thing. It lies a little bit more in our physiology, right? Or in our environment. And in a lot of cases, a sedentary environment, an environment where there's not a lot of motion, not a lot of movement, you know, and there's a lot of tasks and duties can put us in that same thought process, right? Unless you change your physiology and you make yourself move. As we've said before in other podcasts, we define our environment and whether or not we need to apply particular disciplines. Less discipline is required if you're not in an environment that warrants it, right? So if you need to get moving, get in an environment where that's what it does. That's what it calls for, is you moving. That's why so many people get up and they go to the gym, and it's hard to do the same thing at home. So I digress. But going back to the workday, you know, if you look at it, 8 hours a day, right? Literally 8 hours a day. You're looking at screens all day, minimal movement. You're staying in one spot. In some cases, looking at three screens, your neck doesn't even move that much. And then a lot of people wonder, it's like, you know, why do the focus drop? Why do I drop focus? Why does my mood tank? My energy disappears. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the active workday, maintaining a movement and staying physically and mentally active, and the difference that makes on not only your mood, but then also the outcome of what happens throughout the day and at the end of your day, how you end up feeling based on staying active. Little small practical tools that's necessary to maintain a good thought process when it comes to staying active throughout your workday. So I'm going to try to, like I said earlier, get this entire podcast done by walking. So we'll see how long it takes. All right. So let's talk about it. Let's first talk about dormancy. So dormancy is the real enemy, right? That's the real enemy. At the end of the day, when it comes to staying restricted on your movement, it's dormancy that can hurt you and really hit you for long stretches and make a difference, right? Blood flow slows, neural stimulation drops if you're sitting in one spot for so long. Your muscles shut down, right? After a while, things lock up. A lot of us that's been around for a while and lifting, you have joint issues, right? We got enough of that. We don't need more of it. Your posture collapses, and then your focus has a tendency of narrowing also, right? You know, you don't have that open mind as much as you would if you maintain a good fluid amount of time being active, right? So your body goes essentially like a low power mode, you know, those techies, I'm sure you guys can relate to that, you know, and the overlooked part is mental fatigue starts as physical stagnation. So you'll mentally be tired, but then you'll feel things in your body that is a physical translation of what you're going through mentally, right? So it's not being tired because the work is hard, it's because you haven't moved, right? So you can physically get tired from not moving that much because your physiology is altering, you know, to where it's trying to go to more of a dormant state because that's the state that we're putting it in, you know. So it's odd. It's kind of like an oxymoron because your body is choosing not to move and it's becoming more adjusted to not moving. So it's making you more exhausted from that. So Movement feeds the brain, and countering that is what's going to make the difference. So how can you counter that? What's some things that you can do? Well, much like the walking pad that I'm on right now, that is my wife's, that can make a huge difference. Huge difference. You don't even need to walk that fast. I'm not going to embarrass myself to tell you how slow I'm walking. I'm not going to use the word fast, how slow I'm walking on this, but it really makes a difference. Now, it's not about getting a workout in while you're actually working, right? That's not the concept. That's not what you need to do, and that's not the reason to get it. It's about keeping your nervous system online, right? I mentioned that it goes into low power mode if you're not moving. Well, continue to move while physically and mentally everything's interlocked, right? You want to be well rounded. And the way to do that is keep the physical aspects of your body moving, blood flow moving. It increases blood flow to the brain, improves executive function and creativity, believe it or not, as you move and you utilize yourself physically and you get blood flow throughout the rest of your body. It's going to improve your thought process and the way you think. It reduces stress hormones as well. That will drop. Cortisol levels typically drop. And God knows, we're going to go through that as we're working. So you need to exert some energy by doing this to make a difference and to counterbalance that. Posture joints are active, and even slow walking. If you just do a little bit of slow walking, it improves your concentration, reduces anxiety, and increases your work endurance, right? Because the physical aspect of it relieves and relinquishes a lot of the pressure that you feel in your mind while you're going through it, right? So it's important to realize that the physical action really does counterbalance and makes a difference. So let's talk about a couple other tools and techniques that you can use in addition to just walking on the walking pad. So the Pomodoro technique, if you haven't heard of that, that has to do with taking breaks. And again, breaks as in breaks from work. So you may have 25 minutes of straight through, working at your desk, not moving. Take 5 minutes at the top of that 25 minutes to take a break. Walk, stand up, do squat thrusts, do some push-ups, whatever it may be, but you're going to take 5 minutes. And it's important that you don't take any phone calls or anything like that for that 5 minutes. Me, myself, I'm more of a preference of the 50-10 method, which is also a Pomodoro technique. You work for 50 minutes straight, and then after that, you force yourself, you can set an alarm clock, you get up, you move, and you stay active for that 10 minutes. Don't touch work, don't look at a screen, don't answer a phone. Some of you, it can be very difficult based on timing and that sort of thing, but it is flexible. So you do what it makes sense for your particular schedule. So it does make a difference. So let's try the Pomodoro technique, and next time that you work, another great method would be weights at your desk. It can be 5 pound, 10 pound, 15 pound, whatever it may be. And if we're talking about that, we're doing it at the same time. When you're taking a phone call, you don't want to sound exhausted, but do small exercises, and it's more just to get their blood flow. You're not going to be bench pressing 300 pounds while you're talking to somebody on the phone. You're just going to keep some good movement and easy to communicate and talk at the same time type of movement. A lot of shoulder exercises, bicep, triceps, that sort of thing, while you have some weights at your desk. Exercise ball. A lot of people sit on exercise balls while they're holding the conference calls and whatnot. Helps with core and stabilizing, to the point to where, as one of my coworkers they completely forgot they were sitting on it, because I saw them kind of moving around and asked, yeah, oh yeah, I forgot I was even using this thing, because they're so used to it. Okay. And the last but not least, smart watches or any type of smart devices, having those as well. Typically, they have those movement reminders. Water at your desk also helps in small increments. So, they always say, hey, if you have a larger water bottle, that's helpful. But if you have a smaller water bottle and then you set timers to take a sip every so often, eventually you have to get up to refill it, right? So that's another excuse and reason to get up and get moving, just so that you can continue to have activity and not stagnate yourself sitting at your desk all day. Okay? So a couple things outside from that and outside from those tools to where you don't really need to have any of that. Let's hit on those. Breathe work is fantastic when it comes to relieving stress. Things such as parachute breathing. If you haven't heard or done parachute breathing before, inhale sharp 2 seconds, exhale 8 seconds. And that's going to be a technique that you can utilize again while you're working, but it's important that you take 5 minutes to do that. You just don't do it while you're slamming through emails and phone calls, right? So mobility drills between tasks. So again, you set a standard for yourself. If it's a communication on an email or a phone call, before you call back that last number that called you, that contacted you, doing a mobility drill, or even taking the long way, back from the bathroom, anything that's such as a small activity break will make a huge difference. Desk stretches for hips, spine, shoulders, again, carving out time for it. So 5 to 10 minutes doing some type of desk stretches, and not something quick and random, but again, a structured 5 to 10 minutes. That makes a huge difference also. And the importance is that you're not trying to be intense. You're not getting a straight full-fledged workout while you're working, but you want to interrupt stagnation. You're sitting in one spot and not moving. You want to interrupt that because you want to make sure that there's some form of activity and action to keep that blood flow. It's going to help your body stay awake and stay engaged, and that physical movement will help tremendously in making a difference in how you think. Okay? So beyond the workday, let's just talk a little bit about just things to stay moving, right? Some of us, especially on the weekends, we might need that reminder. So a lot of the clients that I train and that I work with fitness and nutrition, I talk about an active rest day, right? What does that mean? Having an active rest day. Well, to have a rest day, that doesn't mean don't move. That doesn't mean just sleep all day. That in the long term will actually make things more difficult for you. And it doesn't also mean overeat, but that's a podcast for a different time. Overall, what it means is to stay active. That's it. Literally just that. To stay active, you set a limit. If it's 10,000 steps, 15,000 steps. And some of the ways you can still do that and not have to go to a full-fledged workout at the gym is walking after meals. Set an expectation after every meal that you eat to walk. If it's a half a mile, if it's a quarter mile, just to some type of walking. Light stretching in the morning and the evening. Playing with kids or pets, again, structured time playing with them, So don't just expect for it to happen, and sometimes you have to be the catalyst. Yard work, cleaning, casual activity, yes, that's included, 100%, absolutely. You best believe that I carve out 30 minutes if I end up cutting my grass for my regular cardio. So 2 birds, 1 stone. Breathe work paired with movement, that makes a huge difference as well, and that helps release stress, And the small actions that I just mentioned, some of the things that it does is improve your insulin sensitivity, enhances mood as well overall. It's one of those things that happens without even thinking about it. Sleep quality typically improves because of the fact that you have maintained more activity. So you got to recharge eventually. Reduces joint stiffness. A lot of us bodybuilders can appreciate that, and keeping your mind sharp at all times, maintaining that. So body thrives on frequent low level input, especially during times where it's supposed to be resting at the same time, because ultimately that's going to heighten how your body processes stress. And the next time that you have to go hard in the gym, or if it's at work, you'll have better blood flow and better thought processes. Okay. So last but not least, let's talk about the mental benefits of staying active. So some of the mental benefits of staying active, it improves your emotional regulation. So you maintain activity. Overall, you can deal with stress. It improves your white cells in your brain. So your white tissue in your brain, it improves upon that. So you can deal with stress a lot better, And that's one of those things that sometimes you don't notice it until you're doing it. Increases your self-confidence, of course, and agency. So the more you do things, the better you feel about yourself. It reduces anxiety and rumination, and it also improves decision making. So again, the clearer your mind is, the more active your mind is, the better blood flow, the better decisions that you make, and how you think. When you move, you're not only training the muscles, you're also training momentum as well. So again, you're changing your physiology. Your body likes to do what it's doing, and it tries to do more of it. But the only way sometimes to get there is you have to start the motion at a certain point. So a moving body creates a moving mind. Okay? So in closing, one big takeaway. So the active workday isn't about fitness, right? It's about function and maintaining function, right? You don't have to be a gym fanatic to, to follow the tips and everything that we talked about today. You stay active, your body supports your mind. You stay dormant, everything slows down because we're well rounded, right? It's just one well-oiled machine, and things will no doubt at least slow down. You think about a car that's been sitting dormant for a while. What happens to the battery? What happens to a battery if a car sits there for 6 months and then you try to drive it? Our bodies are no different. You have to stay in motion, right? You need motion. It doesn't have to be perfection, but you do need motion. Move often, move lightly, move consistently, and your body will thank you. So will your focus as well. So stay active and don't stop moving. I'm going to stop this eventually. Just don't know when.